Namaha. Thank you all so much for being here. Throughout Bhagavad Gita and throughout Srimad Bhagavatam and the Shastras, we learn about the importance of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam and hearing transcendental sound in the association of devotees, and that through that sangam of devotees, that somehow something magical unlocks for us. That it's not just the information we're receiving, but it's the that final door to transformation opens from the inside of the heart. It's not something that we can barrel through, and so when we come together as a sangam of devotees, Krishna becomes pleased with us, and he opens up that inner sanctum of the heart and allows us to understand spiritual realization in a way that we never would have been able to with years of study on our own. So just coming together in this sacred virtual sangha is a service, and each of you are performing a wonderful service by just being here, because you're facilitating each other's Krishna consciousness and ability to absorb transcendental information and realization. And despite any lack of qualification I may have in sharing this, you're very fortunate that it's not dependent on that, because the most simplest of realizations, Krishna can open it up in your heart, because it's really about your openness and sincerity. So we're all going to hear class today, but we're all going to take away something a little bit different in how it will affect our lives. That's the nature of transcendental sound. So thank you so much. Somebody here, Pink Yogi of Harlem, is mentioning that it's supposed to be verses 41 through 45. Okay, so we'll start on verse, is that correct, Daniel? Start on verse 41? Yeah, because I guess some of them have no purport.
On the schedule, it's just 45. So these verses in between may have intentionally been skipped. Gosharan makes the schedule. I'm sorry, I can't make that call.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll just stick with 45. That's the one I've been given. All right. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, chapter 4, verse 45. I can share my screen. Yomamatitim ayatam atityena nimantra echa adatva bhuktavam stasya sadyaste darshaye phalam. Translation. Marj Ambarish, you have invited me to eat as a guest, but instead of feeding me, you yourself have eaten first. Because of your misbehavior, I shall show you something to punish you. Purport. A devotee cannot be defeated by a so-called mystic yogi. This will be proved by the failure of Durvasa Muni's endeavor to chastise Marj Ambarish. Harav abhaktasya kuto mahad guna. One who is not a pure devotee of the Supreme Lord has no good qualifications, however great a mystic, philosopher, or fruit of worker he may be. Only a devotee emerges victorious in all circumstances, as will be shown in this incident following the rivalry between Durvasa and Ambarish Maharaj. Ambarish. So Maharaj Ambarish and Durvasa are having a little interaction. Ambarish Maharaj had invited Durvasa Muni to be his guest, and we know the story leading up to this point, or maybe it's been told recently, so I won't give the whole context of the story. But what we can know is that there's a couple of things here that are quite interesting. I mean, first of all, we hear from our friend and teacher Raghunath some of his 6 pillars of bhakti. I take no offense. And he says that some of us, we know people, or sometimes we know, we're walking around looking to be offended. Some of us are walking around looking to be offended. And Durvasa Muni was one such person, that we're waiting for somebody to offend me. And some of us, Maharaj Ambarish, it seems, sometimes in our service to the Lord, we do everything we can to please another person. We do everything we can to do everything right, and somehow people are still upset with us. If you've ever been in a leadership or management position, I was asking somebody a question recently about leadership, and they were saying leadership, you need to be able to absorb massive amounts of criticism. One of the qualifications. One of my friends was talking about a leadership position in another spiritual community somewhere, and somebody was interviewing for the position there, being like the president or the director, and they said they're talking about the job profile, and they're saying, oh, and the biggest duty of this job is to 50% of this job is to absorb criticism, because when you're in that position, your job is to serve everybody, but at the same time, no matter your greatest efforts, it comes back to you, and people are dissatisfied. And that's in any situation, whether you're the leader of an organization, whether you're a parent, whether you're in an intimate relationship, whether it's at work, whether it's in your friendships or community service, whether it's just in your service to Krishna and devotees, that sometimes, despite our greatest efforts, people are still upset with us. And the natural tendency is to think, that I must be doing something wrong. And we can get very, very discouraged. But what we should actually know is that even Maharaj Ambarish, somebody as pure as Maharaj Ambarish, who did everything right, found himself in a situation where somebody was still upset with him. Somebody was still upset with him. And so we shouldn't let that discourage us in our efforts to perform devotional service. That we shouldn't let, it's a very fine line for devotees to walk. Because on one hand, the pleasure of the devotees is our life and soul. We exist for the service of others. Our nature is to serve others. That divine loving service to Krishna, to the Supreme Lord, is our innate dharma. And that Bhaktivinoda Thakur mentions that love of God in the material world manifests as doya, as compassion to all living beings. So our service to Krishna, our service to other living beings in this world can't be separated. That it's described as it's described in Srimad Bhagavatam as a quality of the Kanishta Adhikar, the kind of less mature devotee, that they walk into the temple room and they see Bhagavan, they see the Lord in the deity, but they don't see that same Supreme Lord in the heart of every other living being. And so for us to feel like I'm serving Krishna, but I'm disconnected from the service of Krishna's devotees, and everybody ultimately is a devotee of Krishna. Jivera Swarupa Hoy Krishna Nityadas, the constitutional situation of every living being. So it's a function of Maya, it's a function of illusion to look at somebody and not see them as an eternal servant of Krishna. So even our greatest enemies, even the people that irk us, even our noisy neighbor, even the politician that we can't stand, even the whoever, the family member that irks us the wrong way, whoever it might be, a mature devotee able to step back and see that this person ultimately is an eternal servant of Krishna. They just haven't realized it yet. And let me not fall into the trap of not realizing it either. So every person is an eternal servant of Krishna, and our dharma is to serve every living entity to our greatest capacity that we're able to. And so in that attempt sometimes to perform that service, Krishna says again and again that you have the right to perform your prescribed duty, but it is not your concern to worry about the results. I mean, it's there in Bhagavad Gita. 248. I don't know the exact Sanskrit. If anybody knows, shout it out. Yeah. 247, 248. Karmanya evadikaraste ma faleshu kadachana. Ma karma phala he turbur ma te sango akarmani. It's very interesting here, the words that are used. 247. This is Bhagavad Gita, Krishna speaking to Arjuna. You have a right to perform your prescriber duty, but you are not entitled to the fruits of action. Never consider yourself the cause of the results of your activities, and never be attached to not doing your duty. So perform your service with full gusto, but the results are not yours. And then in the next verse, Yoga stakuru karmani sangam stokva dhananjaya siddhya siddhyo samo bhutva samatvam yoga uchite. Yoga is called when you perform your prescribed duty, your equipoise, Arjuna, abandoning all attachment to success or failure. Such equanimity is called yoga. So Krishna is letting us know that even in the performance of your service, even in the performance of your bhakti yoga, you will experience seeming failure. Things won't go right. People will be seemingly distressed by your service. It will seem as if it's not making a difference. It will seem sometimes I'm making more of a disturbance than I am a benefit. It will seem that it's not really helping anybody. Or there's so many things that may indicate that it's not going well. And Krishna is saying, yes, be humble. Have guides in your life to autocorrect you. Meaning, don't be so caught in the trap that, even if what I'm doing seems to be hurting people, I'm just going to barrel forward. We should have introspection, and we should have pause to be able to continuously refine our service in order to improve. But we shouldn't judge the quality of our service just based off of the external material results. Because Krishna is saying the reason he's giving this warning to Arjuna is because he's saying you're going to have some successes and you're going to have some failures. There's going to be some victory, there's going to be some defeat. And so interesting here in this verse, this specific verse, and related to the verse we have now, in this verse is 247 of Bhagavad Gita, karmanya karmanyevadikaraste ma phaleshu kadanchara ma karma phalo heturbai. This word phala means fruit, means result. I wonder if it's where we get the English word fruit from. But it means the result of your work. It's used twice here. You're not entitled to the fruits of action. You're not entitled to the phala. You never consider yourself the cause of the results of your activity. Karma, phala, hetu. Hetu means cause. We use this word, what is it? Causeless. Sometimes we use causeless. Ahaituki means causeless. Ahaitu, no hetu, no cause. So this word phala means result, and this the same exact word is used here in the verse with Parikshit Maharaj. I mean with Amrish Maharaj. Phalam. Amrish Maharaj says, because of your misbehavior, I'm going to give you a result. I'm going to give you a result. Sadyaste darshaye phalam. I'm going to show you phalam, the result. And what is that result that he tries to show him? It's this terrible weapon, fire being that he hurls at Amrish Maharaj. And what does Krishna say in the end of the Bhagavad Gita? What's Krishna's final instruction in the Bhagavad Gita? Because he says all this time throughout the Bhagavad Gita, just surrender your activities unto me. He says it again and again in the Bhagavad Gita. Just perform your activities and surrender all the results to me. He says it in the second chapter, verse 61. Even as early as the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, this is verse 61. It says, one who restrains their senses, keeping them under full control, and fixes the consciousness upon me, is known as a person of steady intelligence. And so from again and again in the third chapter, throughout Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is saying, simply surrender your activities and leave the results to me. And eventually in the 18th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, we know one of the most famous verses in Bhagavad Gita, 1866, Krishna says, Sarva dharmam pratyajya mam ekam sharanam braja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshishyami ma shuchaha. Abandon all varieties of religion, all types of dharma, and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful actions. Do not worry. So Krishna is saying, give all the results to me. I will protect you. So this result that Ambarish Maharaj, that Durvasa Muni is trying to give to Ambarish Maharaj, Krishna steps in and says, no, that result's not for you. The success is not for you, and the punishment that you think you get was not for you. And so what does Krishna do directly? Steps in personally. And with his Sudarshan Chakra, he counteracts this weapon of Durvasa Muni and he hurls it at Durvasa. And Durvasa Muni runs throughout the universe trying to escape the Sudarshan Chakra of Lord Vishnu, and eventually is led back to the lotus feet of Ambarish Maharaj to beg forgiveness. And therefore we find another beautiful salient quality of devotee, which is patience. Materially, we're so used to judging things. I mean, we live in such an immediate, reactionary, judgmental society. We're so quick to judge the results of something as a success or a failure. I mean, it's such a mental society in the sense when you think about the function of the mind is literally to accept or to reject. That the singular function of the mind in Vedic psychology is to judge. That's all it does. This is good, this is bad. This is pretty, this is ugly. This is a success, this is a failure. This is nice, this is not nice. I like this, I don't like that. I accept this, I reject this. The singular function of the mind is to judge. And we've just in this heightened sense of judgmental society, we judge things so quickly. And spiritual maturity is allowing us to take space to not judge so quickly and to judge according to a higher consciousness. Because Maharaj Ambarish, in the moment, was a failure in his service. He invited Durvasa Muni to be a guest, and he upset him. But he didn't react immediately because he knew the result. Well, he knew that all I can do, I did my best. And Durvasa Muni was angry at him, and then Durvasa Muni eventually fell at his feet and was begging him forgiveness. So the devotee has maturity to not react to someone's response right away, because the response of people can be so flickering. Because Durvasa Muni was functioning on the level of the mind. Ambarish was functioning on the level of the soul. So when we function on the level of the soul, we become much less reactionary. And if I'm getting reactionary to things, there's so many things to get reactive about today. Economically, socially, environmentally, politically, we're so reactionary. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't feel anything about things that are happening and going on, because we should. But am I just judging immediately on the level of the mind? And that my judgment sways and shifts according to, my particular situation or position in life? And that's what's happening. Somebody's standing on one side of an aisle looking at things, and they feel so strongly because their mind is a certain vantage point. Somebody else completely thinks that they're justified from their vantage point, and they're looking at each other and thinking, how could you possibly think like that? But Maharaj Ambarish is able to step back because he's functioning on the level of the soul. And he's able to be patient and see the whole picture. Because sometimes things come full circle, just like they did with Durvasa Muni. That when somebody portrays themselves to be your enemy, like Durvasa Muni portrayed himself to be Maharaj Ambarish's enemy, Ambarish did not fight back and be like, oh, you bully Durvasa Muni, like how could you treat me that way? And he would have been justified in saying and doing all of that stuff. But he didn't. There's no mention of Ambarish Maharaj throwing it back at Durvasa Muni, defending himself. Just had patience and trust in Krishna. And things eventually came full circle. This Prabhupada's beautiful, beautiful purport here. A devotee cannot be defeated by a so-called mystic yogi because the devotee knows that they're surrendered to Krishna. Krishna gives me full protection. Krishna gives me full protection. Krishna's promise is to give me full protection. And the devotee also, like Ambarish Maharaj, our humility gives us full protection. Our humility gives us a full protection because our humility is the manifest in the mantra, I live to be corrected. I live to be corrected. So I'm not afraid to be proven wrong. I'm not afraid to be corrected, and I'm constantly live to improve myself. So if there's a way I can grow and improve, I welcome it. But at the same time, I know that sincerely I'm acting from the greatest intention of my heart, and I'm acting to serve Krishna and all his devotees. So Maharaj Ambarish, a devotee cannot be defeated by a so-called mystic yogi. This will be proved by the failure of Durvasa Muni's endeavor to chastise Maharaj Ambarish. Why? Because when the devotee is fully surrendered to the Lord, the devotee frees themselves from the reactions of their activities. And therefore, to be angry at a devotee who is fully surrendered to the Lord is to be angry at Krishna. And to be angry at Krishna and to try to overcome Krishna, it can happen as evidenced in the story here. Harava Bhaktasya Guta Mahad Guna. One who is not a pure devotee of the Supreme Lord has no good qualifications, however great a mystic, philosopher, or fruitive worker they may be. Why do they have no good qualifications? It's because their qualifications have no direction. Because it's misguided. Because it is fueled by ego. Hanuman, when he went to deliver the message to Sita Devi that Lord Ram is coming, he saw the opulence of Ravana. You know what he thought? He thought, wow, this person is so opulent, is so powerful, has such tremendous influence, is such a mystic yogi. Ravana was such a mystic yogi. He thought, imagine the service he could do if he was only a devotee of Lord Ram. Imagine what great things he could do if he was a devotee of Lord Ram. Contrast to how we may feel sometimes when we look at successful, wealthy, materially beautiful people, we think, oh, if only I had a little bit of that myself. Hanuman thought, I don't want any of this. Imagine, though, if he was a servant of Lord Ram. And that's the whole story of the Ramayana. We had Lord Ram's appearance yesterday. The entire story of the Ramayana is that when we try to take the opulences of Krishna and use them for our selfish motives, it creates great destruction. And so sometimes we think, well, don't devotees have good qualities? What are you talking about? They're nice, or they have opulence and this and that. It's not that they don't have anything good in their lives, but it's that they don't know how to use it properly. It's misdirected. That's also one of the very powerful verses in Srimad Bhagavatam. In the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 3, when the incarnation of wait a second, Ryan. Oh no, not it's a first canto, chapter 3, the first canto. Talks about the Bhagavatam appearing in this world. Let's see. Yeah. This Bhagavad Purana is as brilliant as the sun and has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied by religion, knowledge, etc. Persons who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of ignorance in the age of Kali shall get light from this Purana. Yeah. Persons who have lost their their vision. There's another verse that mentions that the um, misdirected lives, misdirected civilization, that Bhagavatam is meant to give that guidance. So when it says here that one who's not a devotee has no good qualifications, it means that whatever good qualifications they have lose their value because they're not directed in the right way. They're not directed in the right way. Just like Durvasa Muni was so powerful. What did he do? He was just using it for self-aggrandizement because he's looking to be offended. Try to punish another devotee who's so sincere in his effort. And that's a lesson for us also. Durvasa Muni, it's like we look for the faults in others rather than seeing how this devotee is serving so sincerely. So Durvasa Muni, however great a mystic, philosopher, fruitive worker they may be, only a devotee emerges victorious in all circumstances because they're surrendered fully to Krishna. As will be shown in this incident involving the rivalry between Durvasa and Ambarish Maharaj. And that's the last point that I'll make before opening up to discussion or questions, is that this idea of faith in Krishna to protect us. And that's Krishna's promise to Arjuna. We read that verse in the last chapter of Bhagavad Gita, 1866. Sarvadamana prityaja mam ekam sharanam praja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshishami ma suchaha. And Krishna says, I will protect you. And so the devotee has that faith. Maharaj Ambarish had that faith. Prahlad Maharaj had that faith. Parikshit Maharaj had that faith. Srila Prabhupada had that faith. Not I will emerge victorious, but Krishna's will be done. That Krishna's will unfolding is the only reality that exists. And my job is simply to align myself with that reality. And when I align myself with that reality, with Krishna's will unfolding in this world, then I'm under protection, not because I'm so great or because I'm better than others, but because I've aligned myself with truth. And the Mahabharata demonstrates that. That's the whole story of Bhishma Dev. People say, how is it possible that Bhishma Dev was on the wrong side? The wrong side of the army. Bhishma Dev was a greater warrior than all of the Pandavas put together. Even showed he was going to kill the Pandavas. And it wasn't Krishna had to break his promise and personally step in to the battle to defend against Bhishma Dev in order to save Arjuna. Bhishma Dev was the greatest warrior on that battlefield. But it shows that even if you're the greatest warrior, and Prabhupada says here in the purport, however great a mystic, philosopher, furtive worker you may be, however great a warrior you may be, if you're not on the right side, if you're standing against Krishna, you will find defeat. So we learn that again and again. Hiranyakashipu against Prahlad? Hiranyakashipu, the greatest mystic in all the universe, so the demigods stood in fear if he just wiggled his eyebrows, was defeated couldn't harm or kill his 5-year-old son. We find it again and again. And so the devotee carries this faith. But that faith doesn't mean that everything's rosy and cheeky along the way. Maharaj Ambarish faced tremendous pressure, had reason for tremendous fear, seemingly was a complete failure in his service to Durvasa Muni. But he stood calm with faith. And he stood in the face of failure. He stood in the face of destruction. He stood in the face of criticism. He stood in the face of adversity. And he calmly, humbly, faithfully stood his ground. Never once throwing it back in Durvasa Muni's face. Never once proving his case, trusting that if I align myself with Krishna's will and surrender everything to Krishna, that he will protect me. Because I'm not trying to be right, I'm just trying to be a servant. I'm not trying to prove Durvasa Muni wrong, I'm just trying to do what's best. And when things go right, Hare Krishna. When things go wrong, Hare Krishna. When people praise me, Hare Krishna. When people despise me and criticize me, Hare Krishna. When I'm comfortable and happy with the results and life seems to be going well, Hare Krishna. When things get really, really tough and things are taken away from me and it feels like everything's falling apart, Hare Krishna. Because the devotee recognizes that this world is very flickering and it's going to come, it's going to go. People are going to praise me, they're going to criticize me. I'm going to find success and failure materially. Wealth will come my way, poverty will soon be here again. So not to get too attached to those things and to follow the example of Maharaj Ambarish in his surrender, in his humility, in his faith, in his trust, in his equanimity of mind, in his patience. All of those qualities are demonstrated by Maharaj Ambarish. We can take his example. Okay, so I'd like to just share or open space up. Oh, there's a comment here. Why didn't Krishna give intelligence to Bhishma Dev to be on Pandava's side as Bhishma was Lord's devotees too? In regards to that question, first of all, one way that I understand it is that Bhishma Dev was performing that service. That Krishna wanted to teach a lesson through Bhishma Dev's example. Because Bhishma was such a great devotee, evidenced in the ninth chapter of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam when Bhishma Dev passes away. There's that beautiful, beautiful verse in Srimad Bhagavatam. I'll find it real quickly for you. It's in the ninth chapter of the first canto. Because Bhishma Dev was blessed with this ability to pass away at his own will. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That there's this verse. Yeah. Yep, here it is. Okay, I'll share my screen with you. So this is from the ninth chapter of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Chapter 9, the passing away of Bhishma Dev in the presence of Lord Krishna. So verse 29. After Bhishma Dev had instructed Yudhisthira Maharaj and everybody came to see Bhishma. So it's interesting because Yudhisthira Maharaj, the leader of the enemy side of Bhishma, came to see Bhishma Dev. And what did Bhishma Dev do? You Yudhisthira, you defeated me. No, he was like, let me instruct you, my dear grandson, on how to lead the kingdom. Let me give you my full blessings. So you can see Bhishma Dev accepted that role, but he knew he was serving Krishna's will. While Bhishma Dev was describing occupational duties, the sun's course ran into the northern hemisphere. This period is desired by mystics who die at their will. So Bhishma Dev is ready to leave his body. Thereupon, that man who spoke on different subjects with thousands of meanings and who fought of thousands of battlefields and protected thousands of men stopped speaking and being completely freed from all bondage withdrew his mind from everything else and fixed his wide opened eyes upon the original personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, who stood before him, four-handed, dressed in yellow garments that glittered and shined. So Bhishma Dev performed his service. His service that was Krishna's will for him in this life. And sometimes Krishna positions us in a situation, I don't understand why Krishna's put me here. I don't like where Krishna's put me. It may not seem to make any sense why Krishna's put me here. But Krishna's put me here. And Krishna put Bhishma in a lot of situations. It says here, thousands of battlefields. But now that it's all done, the Lord of his heart came to him. And Bhishma never lost sight of his beautiful, beautiful Lord. By pure meditation, looking at Lord Shri Krishna, he at once was freed from all material inauspiciousness and was relieved of all bodily pains caused by the arrow wounds. So all of the pain that this world brings to us, all of the pain that we accrue in the performance of our service, Krishna relieves that when the time is there to come to him. And so now, Bhishma said, let me invest my thinking, feeling, and willing, which were so long engaged in different subjects and occupational duties, in the all-powerful Lord Sri Krishna, who is always self-satisfied, but sometimes, being the leader of the devotee, enjoys transcendental pleasure by descending to the material world, although for him only the material world is created. And so it goes on here and it mentions the meditation that he had on Lord Shri Krishna and his beautiful at the moment of death, let my ultimate attraction be to Shri Krishna. I concentrate my mind upon the chariot driver of Arjuna, who stood with a whip in his right hand and a bridle rope in his left, who was very careful to give protection to Arjuna's chariot by all means. Those who saw him on the battlefield of Kurukshetra attained their original forms of death. And so he's saying here that even though I was fighting against him, Bhishma Dev knows I was fighting against Krishna, I was fighting against Arjuna, knowing full well that Arjuna is protected by the Lord. But Bhishma was showing that example. That even I, if I'm fighting against Krishna, will not be victorious. And so Krishna put Bhishma Dev in that situation to teach us that lesson. But at the same time, Bhishma knew he was simply serving Krishna, and at the time of his death, he didn't get bitter, he wasn't angry. He didn't try, I should have been, why didn't Krishna put me on the side of the Pandavas? He's like, no, I did my duty, this was my role, and now I'm done with this role, and let me go back to Krishna. Wasn't attached to the sense of justice or the sense of what should have been or should not have been. Now let me be done with it. I've done my service, let me be done with this role in this material world. So powerful. Bhakti Tirtha Swami, in his last public appearance, I was there in 2005 in Gitanagari. Bhakti Tirtha Swami was sitting in front of a room of his disciples and followers and God family. And he was meditating on his final destination into the spiritual world. He said, I'm leaving this world and I'm going back to Krishna. And he said, I'm not John Favors. John Favors was his legal name before he met the devotee. He said, I'm not John Favors. I'm not Ganesham Das, which was the name Prabhupada gave him initiation. He says, I'm not Bhakti Tirtha Swami. That's not my identity in the spiritual world. It's my service to Prabhupada in this world. I'm not going to be walking around Vrindavan with the danda and saffron robes. And so we perform our service in this world. Whatever dress or form or title it comes or doesn't come with. You know? I'm not a yoga teacher in the spiritual world. I'm not an Ayurveda specialist in the spiritual world. Adi Purush is making garlands. He may be a garland maker in the spiritual world. There are certain services that will continue. But you get the point. Bhishma Dev did his service. And when that service was done, he fixated. His mind was always fixated on Krishna, and now it just went back to Krishna. So I hope that answers the question about Bhishma Dev. Thank you guys all so much. Is there any other final comment, question that's there? I was told that there's not going to be darshan on this screen, so we can just go until 8 o'clock, another minute or two. If anybody wanted to ask a question or share a reflection, you're more than welcome to. It's so beautiful to see everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Yeah, I just want to say how extremely relevant this class was for me at this particular time. I'm referring to the point that you cannot judge your devotional service by your material situation or material results, whether they're, no matter how unfavorable they may seem to you, that's not a judge as to whether, you are doing your duty, so thank you for emphasizing that point.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. I think about that oftentimes when I give class, because sometimes I don't know what I'm going to say, and I just think, you know what? As long as I'm thinking about the purpose of this class is for me to say something meaningful and impressive and inspiring to the devotees, I'm again functioning on the level of mind because I want to be accepted rather than rejected. But if I think my service is just to speak, and if I make a fool of myself and embarrass myself and give other people a good laugh, what a service that is to them, that they have the opportunity to chuckle a little bit at my folly. And so I'm just the cannon fodder for Krishna. You know, just shove it in the cannon and let it explode whatever it needs to in Krishna's service. And so,
Actually, while we're on this point, I would ask you, I wonder if there are certain situations or circumstances where, a person is doing their service or they feel like they're doing what Krishna wants. And, their material situation is very unfavorable despite that. I'm wondering if there are any times when the material outcome the material outcome of doing one's service does serve as an indication that maybe you need to make some adjustments. So when is your material situation an indicator that you need to make some adjustment in your devotional service, and when is it that we should just be totally disconnect the two and just in the spirit of not being attached to the outcome? How do you?
That's a great question. That's a great question, Gil. When sometimes my external material circumstance indicates to me that something does need to change, and how do I know? And I think you gave a hint to the answer there. Is first and foremost we have to be detached, because if we're not detached, we're not going to see clearly. And ever ask anybody for ever need advice, and you think about the people to ask for advice, and you specifically think of the people that will probably give you the answer you're looking for. and you think of the people who aren't probably going to give you the answer you're looking for. I'm not going to ask them. And so first and foremost, we have to genuinely be detached. We have to live with that mantra, I live to be corrected. I simply, sincerely want what's best. And we get to that place through our sincere sadhana and our sangha. So first and foremost, we have to really assess, how detached am I from the situation? And we may not be detached. We may recognize that we're very attached to the outcome. I don't want things to change, or I do want to change, or whatever. And so we have to just first at least be honest with ourselves. We can't pretend that we're more detached than we are. But we should at least be honest. You know what I mean? Like, let's say there's a relationship we want to get out of, and like everything is, I'm looking for excuses to get out of this relationship. And we should just recognize that I have a preference. And so that's just first and foremost, is understanding where our attachment or detachment is. And the second is that's the importance of, Krishna mentions it in the various parts of the Bhagavad Gita. He mentions it in the 4th chapter when he says, Tadvini paripatena, pariprashnena sevayu upadikjanti te jnana jnaninas tattvadarshana, that you should serve submissively with great inquiry the spiritual master. So our gurus, our Diksha Guru and our Shiksha Gurus, who are the gurus in our life, and who is the sangam of devotees? Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. How am I connected to Guru? How am I connected to sadhus? And where is Shastra shining in my life? We will get Krishna will speak to us through those forums. Then he also says, what's the verse? 10:10, Adi Prishru? I'm blanking now. That Krishna, to those who are surrendered to me with love and devotion, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. Desham satadiyuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami bhuri yogamam jainamam upayantite. That when one serves me with love and devotion, not with some mixed motive, but with pure love and devotion, I give the intelligence by which they can come to me. So Krishna, the Guru, exists within and without. So the Guru in the heart, the Chaitya Guru, Krishna speaks to us. If we approach him with sincere feeling and humility and detachment, he will speak to us from within. But we have to learn how to see past the buzzing of our mind into the silent calling of our heart. And Krishna speaks to us without, through the Shastra, through the Guru, and through sadhus. So if it's just me and my mind trying to figure it out, good luck. But you have to have that surrender and faith to, and where are those relationships and people in my life that I can go to that can, and ultimately, again, Prabhupada also mentions in the first canto of Bhagavatam when he talks about Draupadi, we have to fly our own plane. We have to make the decision at the end of the day. No one's going to tell us what to do. There's no formula in answer to your question. There's no formula that when material circumstances get to this point, type these, there's no website you can type in these circumstances of your life. It calculates. You should change. You should not. There's no formula. There's intelligence and there's guidance. And we may not always make the right decision. And I think that I was just talking with a good friend yesterday who said that courage is the willingness to make mistakes. Courage is the willingness to make mistakes. And so we do our best. We're not always going to get it right. We open ourselves up to Krishna from within to guide us and correct us. And we also open ourselves up to Guru Krishna's representatives without to guide us and correct us.
Okay, but what if somebody says that, okay, if I'm opening up myself to Krishna for guidance, then why should I end up making a mistake?
Because maybe you need to learn something from that mistake.
Mm-hmm.
What the work that's done within you is always far greater than the work you think you need to do without you, outside of you. Our effort to change the world, our effort to do good to others, really is ultimately, we're all on a journey. We have to remember we're on a journey back to Krishna. We're not pure devotees here. This world is it's a giant correctional facility, and that more than anything, this journey is meant for me to fix my ego and make my journey back to Krishna.
Mm-hmm.
So my service really is for me. And so sometimes you may make a mistake, and it's just, where do I go with that mistake? Do I get bitter and resentful towards Krishna? Or do I become more humble and realize my greater dependence? And sometimes what I think is a mistake is like Ambarish Maharaj. You could have said Ambarish Maharaj made a mistake. He made a mistake in serving Devasa Muni. But he was patient. He realized that you make a mistake. Devasa Muni made a mistake. And then Devasa Muni corrected that mistake and he became humble. He got great mercy. So material mistakes are very short-lived. We can't get too caught up in them. Material consciousness is when I make a material mistake and I project it into eternity. Oh, this is forever. It's like, no, it's just a little material mistake. It may seem like a big deal, but it'll pass. Just like Maharaj Ambarish made a mistake with Devasa Muni. It looked like he was going to die. He didn't get overwhelmed. Devasa Muni made a great mistake and was running from the Sudarshan Chakra. He fell at the feet of Ambarish Maharaj. All was rectified and there was peace. So there really are no mistakes in that sense, because everything gets washed away with time. And therefore Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 240 that any endeavor on this path will meet with eternal benefit.
So just to be a little clearer, what would you say is the difference between, because, whether you are a materialist or a spiritualist, trying to purify yourself of your false ego, either kind of person, materialist or spiritualist, can make mistakes and learn from them. So if that's the case, what's the difference between a materialist learning by their mistakes and a spiritualist who went to God for guidance and still made mistakes?
The difference is that learning from the mistake brings me closer to Krishna. If learning from that mistake brings me closer to Krishna, then that's a spiritualist.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's yoga.
Whereas, I guess, the materialist who learns from his mistakes, he just learns how to do things in a way that gives him greater material benefit.
Yeah, what did I really learn? depends on what my goal is, where I'm reaching. And that's why Prabhupada said in the purport of the verse that no matter how great a mystic, a yogi, or fruitive worker, how great a warrior you might be, it's misguided and misdirected. It's not going to, and then I think it also leads, it doesn't have to be like this, they're so stupid, they don't know what they're doing. It's satisfaction of the soul. Where is that satisfaction of the soul? And we're finding it today. There's a beautiful, one of my godbrothers, Ganesham Priya Prabhu, we know him as Jay Shetty, just did a podcast interview with Will Smith. Said that he had one of the greatest runs of cinematic history as an actor. And he's at a point in his life now where he's seeking spirituality, like we all do. And so no matter how powerful we are materially, there's a satisfaction of the heart that yearns to be fulfilled. So we can learn materially, but if that material knowledge does not bring us towards Krishna, it goes up, it goes down. It doesn't last. There's no lasting, because Krishna mentions in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, one of the first instructions, he says, that which is real is that which is eternal. And that which is false and temporary, that is asat. It's not eternal. So any material knowledge is just temporary. No real benefit to the soul. There's a seeming temporary flickering benefit now, but there's nothing really there. And that's the greatest illusion we think. We look out in the material world and we see people that seem to have so much, and we think, oh, they're doing better than me. It's like, no. I don't know. They temporarily seem to be having something that I don't have, and that's going to change. Real benefit to the soul is eternal. And it's whatever ounce of love we can gain towards Krishna. And that'll never go away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, wonderful answer, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Wonderful questions. Thank you. Thank you guys all so much. Grateful to all of you. We went over, but how well can I hear that podcast? It's Jay Shetty. If you go to wherever you listen to podcasts, it's called On Purpose. On Purpose is the name of the podcast. Jay Shetty, JayShetty. Great podcast there. His most recent one. I really, really would recommend listening to it. If you just go to Spotify or Apple Podcasts and look for Jay Shetty On Purpose, or you just Google search it, or you find Jay Shetty on social media, find it. Okay, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you, Daniel Prabhu, for hosting these classes and doing so much on the back end to keep these going. Thank you so much. It's very, very selfless of you, and very grateful. We wouldn't be here without you. And thank you all for being here and staying on. Thank you for those who are listening, if you're listening on YouTube or other platforms. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Thank you.